Well, thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The United Nations has come under renewed pressure over its handling of sexual abuse allegations amongst its peacekeepers. The Code Blue campaign group says the UN has failed to deal with the issue and has called for member states to create an independent body to investigate the claims. Now, the Central African Republic is one of those countries where horrific accounts of abuse from alleged victims have prompted calls for concrete action from the UN. Well, let's take a look at some of the comments that the UN has made about the abuse allegations over the past year.
Enough is enough. I cannot put into words how anguished and angered and ashamed I am.
This is deeply disturbing. I'm appalled at the fact that our peacekeepers, and let me put it very clearly, a minority of our peacekeepers are still involved in such egregious acts.
When these kinds of allegations come to light, particularly involving minors, which are so hard to understand.
And where we are taking very vigorous measures of both victim assistance as also prosecution of those who have been alleged to have committed these crimes through their member state.
Well, in a moment, I'll be speaking to a UN Special Representative for the CAR, but with me now is Samantha Asumadu. She's the Director of Media Diversified. Thanks for taking time to talk to us. Right. You're a media analyst, and you started a campaign to put more pressure on the UN to be held accountable. But we've heard from that clip, they're
they're all very sorry. They're very ashamed. Regardless of that,
what more do you want?
We want action. I mean, I heard in your opening statement that there's been a call for another review. There was a review in December 2015. It was the report of an independent review on the sexual exploitation and abuse by international peacekeeping forces in the Central African Republic, and they highlighted many disturbing cases, but they also gave 12 recommendations. What we're doing with our campaign, which we have named sort of predatory peacekeepers, because this is what they are. They are not keeping peace, they're not keeping, they haven't kept anybody safe. They've in fact abused the people that they should have been looking after. And so we have started this campaign to put pressure on the top man, specifically Ban Ki-moon, because it is his responsibility. He has only a few months left in his job. And is this the legacy that he wants to leave?
Well, the UN would argue probably that, look, it's up to the countries that contribute troops to the conflict areas to take responsibility and hold the peacekeepers to account. Absolutely,
they should. But who is to tell them that but the head of the UN? I mean, this specific case has looked at French peacekeepers who are in Bangui in Central African Republic. But, I mean, these cases have been highlighted since 1993 in Somalia, where you had a case where a young boy was killed by Canadian peacekeepers at that time. You go back, you go further, you've got cases in southern Sudan, in Haiti, in all sorts of places. This isn't one rotten apple. This is a barrel full of apples.
So it does seem to have some history. But what would success look like for you? Because this is just a petition. What do you hope to achieve with this?
We are looking at grassroots support. We do not believe that the UN can ignore grassroots support. People who are, they've had enough. We in the West have had enough. Everybody in Africa has had enough of these abuses. And so we've asked for 3 central points, and that is that the recommendations from the report of 2015 be put into practice, that the French government withdraw all the troops from Central African Republic and investigate and prosecute the perpetrators of these horrific abuses of children. Let's be specific, this is children that they have abused. And if these children were on the streets of the UK or France, I don't think they would be ignoring it. And also, I mean, there was calls in France saying that, well, we don't know if they're telling the truth. That's not good enough. And the last one is that the victims get proper support.
All right, we'll hear from the UN in just a moment. Samantha, thank you for taking time to talk to us on the program. Well, Diane Corner is in the Central African Republic, and she is the Deputy Special Representative for the UN in Bangui. Diane, horrifying stories have come out of the Central African Republic, allegations of abuse, horrific stories. What does it make you feel when you hear such devastating accounts?
Personally, it sickens me. Personally, it makes me feel incredibly sad. It also horrifies me that, you know, within this organization, we can have a minority of people who might do these kinds of things, and also not just within the UN as well. Obviously, we're talking about other international forces here too. But also, it makes me angry and it makes me determined to do something about it. And I know there are an awful lot of people within this mission that feel exactly the same way too.
So you're determined to do something about it. But as recently as 2 weeks ago, we're still getting reports of abuse taking place. What has been done to protect the people since?
Well, let me just make clear that the reports that came out a couple of weeks ago actually referred to historic abuses. I mean, cases that we are discovering now, allegations that are coming out now, which relate to 2015, 2014, 2013. Now, it's appalling that they happened. But the point is that this year we've actually got 4 cases so far.
Does it not make a difference, really? I mean, any case, whether it's 1 or 30, whether it was last year or 2015, it still is an issue, isn't it?
Absolutely. Every single allegation is taken seriously. But the point is that we've now put in place much more stringent measures. And what we need to measure is, are those measures working?
What are these
steps
measures
that we've taken? Is it actually stamping out abuse? Well, for example, we put in place training, a lot more communications. We've rotated in new troops. We've rotated out 1 battalion and 1 company. It's 120 soldiers from another battalion who had where there was a history of abuse within those contingents. We've put in place confinement to barracks. And soldiers are only allowed out now when they're on active duty. We've declared certain areas off limits. We've put in place much stronger perimeter fencing around our camps.
What have you done? What have you done about those who have been accused of abuses? No one has been prosecuted so far for anything that happened in the CAR.
Well, that's not quite true. I mean, there have been prosecutions. There was 1 person who's actually been found guilty. There are other trials which are underway, other judicial procedures which are underway. I mean, the point is that this is not a process which the UN as an organization controls end to end. We're reliant on troop-contributing countries who retain sovereignty over their contingents in the sense of military justice over their contingents to complete the processes, to complete their investigations, and to bring criminals to justice and to punish them.
Right. We've talked about the soldiers, we've talked about the peacekeepers, we haven't talked about the victims. What have you done concretely that you can tell us that you've done for the victims, for those who've been abused?
Well, what we've set up in the Central African Republic is we've set up what we call an SEA task force. So we're working very closely with UNICEF, with UNFPA, that's the population agency, and with UNHCR and with OCHA as well, which is another protection agency. And indeed, they're also working very closely with local NGOs. And through that network, we are providing psychosocial support and medical support as well. We're tracking the victims. We're also following up with our human rights people and with child protection people as well. More needs to be done, and the UN is putting in place a trust fund. It's going to be centrally run. It's being done from New York. It's put in place now, which is going to provide further for the needs of victims, because the UN as an organisation recognises that much more needs to be done.
All right, Diane Corner, I'm sure a lot of people will be watching what the UN is doing about the situation in the CAR, but thanks for taking time to talk to us in the programme. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you.